Good afternoon and welcome to the fourth in the series of spring conference sessions sponsored by the Southwestern Commission Area Agency on Aging. We're so glad that you are with us today. My name is Sarah Melton and I'm the director of the Area Agency on Aging. And we do this spring conference in honor of Older Americans Month, which is May of every year. I don't know if you can see my shirt, but it says Aging Unbound, and that is the national theme for Older Americans Month this year. And we are pleased to be able to continue to offer you good information. We hope that you learn something both professionally and personally that can help you going through this journey that we're all on together, and we're better together. Today, our session is Medicaid as it relates to long-term care. And I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Allen, staff member here at the Area Agency on Aging, and she's going to introduce our speakers.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lisa Allen, and I'm the health and community educator here at the AAA. And it is an honor to introduce these next two speakers. I'm going to start with Mistie Cooley. Mistie Cooley has worked in long-term care for nearly 20 years. She started her career in long-term care in the early 2004 at Skyland Care Center, and I'm sure many of you know her as the business officer in 2011. She completed training and testing for her long-term care administrator's license. She has served as the administrator at Skyland Care Center since that time until last October, when she purchased another local facility in Waynesville and now works as the COO between both buildings. Mistie loves long-term care and loves leading staff and finding ways to bring smiles to the faces of their residents each day. And I would encourage you to take a look at her Facebook if you've never. She posts a lot of those activities online, and it's very heartwarming to see all the fun things that residents are getting to do. So we're just so glad to have you with us, Mistie. And then our next speaker is Michelle Spry. Michelle Spry has been a long-term care Medicaid worker at social services for over 2 years. She's been in the medical field most of her life, volunteered for a few years, then nutrition, nursing assistant in long-term care, medical billing, pharmacy, in-home care, and Medicaid for the past 5 years. She's always enjoyed helping people any way she can. So we're just so thankful to have you both bringing your expertise to this session. Thank you.
And before they start, I'll remind you, we'll be monitoring the chat. So we will have the ability to ask questions. If you have a question, put it in the chat, and we will get it to whichever speaker needs to answer it at that point. So take it away, ladies.
Can you hear me okay? All right. Good morning, everyone. As she said, I'm Michelle Spry. I'm an adult Medicaid worker for Clay County DSS. I'm glad to be here with you today. I want to talk a little bit about long-term care Medicaid and some frequently asked questions we get. Let's get started. Long-term care Medicaid is a Medicaid program that helps pay for care in a skilled nursing facility, immediate care facility for MR, state mental hospital, or general hospital after 30 consecutive days. Folks will ask, are there other options to nursing home care? Yes. Talk with your local Medicaid worker to see if you're able and qualified to stay in the home and receive services. There are a few options like CAP that provides an aid to the client in the home. There is special assistance in home that can provide extra funds and services for the client to help them stay in the home. And there are many more programs. If this is not a viable option, make sure you talk with your worker about facility options that are available. There are adult care home, rehab facilities, long-term care facilities, and more. And then another question is, how do I get started? You can apply in person, by phone, online, or by mail. Make sure you complete the entire application packet, sign all the paperwork, and provide the agency with information that is correct to the best of your knowledge. So that way there's no problems later. Provide information as quickly as possible. The worker needs time to work through your application. If an application is not completed or you don't turn in the requested information, it can result in a slower processing time or possibly denial. Then you have to either reapply, or it could result in having to pay for a full nursing home bill out of your own pocket, and that can get costly. Another is who can apply for the client. The client themselves, if they are competent and able to sign paperwork or make a mark, the spouse of the client, or someone with legal power of attorney, guardianship, or authorized representative paperwork. Medicaid authorized representative paperwork can be provided by a Medicaid worker prior to the application process. We need one of these documents at application if the client or spouse does not sign, in order to protect the date of that application. Does the Medicaid agency take care of getting my family member into a facility? The answer is no. You must talk with your facility representatives. Your local caseworker will work with the facility for some information, but they can't get the client into the facility.
Yeah, let me stop you for just a minute. You can't get the person into the facility, but the benefit doesn't begin until the person is in the facility and you all have communicated. Is that correct?
Correct. And I've got a little more about that here in a minute. So
Sorry,
That's okay. Yeah, you're good. All right. Another question is, how long does it take to receive an approval or a denial? It can take up to 45 days to process an application, depending on how fast the caseworker can get all needed information to determine the eligibility. Again, that's why it's important to get the caseworker information requested as quickly as possible. Different eligibility factors. There are several factors we look at when checking eligibility for Medicaid. They must meet citizenship requirements, income limits, resource limits, and be in a North Carolina Medicaid approved facility, and have an approved FL2 from that facility. We also look at if the client is an SSI recipient, if they're under 65 years old, have they been declared disabled by Social Security Administration? For the income, we look at the gross income before anything comes out. The income limits vary with each facility. Your resource limit is $2,000, and make sure you talk with your worker about what is a countable resource for you and whose resources count to you. The FL2 I discussed earlier, your caseworker will work with the facility for that.
Explain for just a thought, Michelle, what a FL, I call it the paper that floats the boat, but that's not a good explanation of it.
It is a paper that pretty much tells when you were admitted into the facility, where you came from, what services you need from that facility, how extensive services you need. It tells diagnosis of what's going on with you, medications, contact information for family, just a whole bunch of different things on there. And the doctor signs it stating that that's correct.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, but does it also tell what level of care the doctor is skilled or adult?
You were breaking up a little bit, but The level of care, yes, the doctor puts on there what level of care they need, so. Okay, if you find that your resources are over the limit, talk to your worker about options to reduce those resources. There are things you can do in most cases to help you become resource eligible. There is a look back period. The date varies depending when the individual applies for services and what services they apply for. Sanctions can be determined for transfers that take place on or after the look back dates. Just talk with your worker to get more details on that. State recovery is a big one. Everybody asks about losing that home, mom and dad's home. There again, make sure you talk with your caseworker because not all Medicaid programs are subject to a state recovery. Long-term care Medicaid is subject to recovery. There are things that they exclude from recovery. One is if your assets are below a certain amount at death. There are situations in which they waive recovery. One example of that is when there is a living spouse in the home. The state does not take any action until the client is deceased, and they do not recover assets that are not in the client's estate at the time of death. And no liens are placed on property as part of the recovery process either.
Michelle, do you mind repeating that?
Sure. The whole thing or?
The reasons for not being pursued by a state recovery.
Gotcha. There's a lot of them. These are just a couple examples. Excluded from recovery if your assets are below a certain amount at death. That's one example. And then waiving recovery if you have a living spouse, they waive estate recovery. So that's one waiver that they've got. And the state doesn't take action, of course, until you're deceased. And there's no liens that are put on the property as part of the recovery process either. How much of their income goes to the facility? That's another big one. The caseworker completes a budget for the amount that goes to the facility and the amount that stays in the client's banking account. There's a few factors the worker has to look at. How long is the client's estimated stay in the facility? Is there a spouse living in the same facility and or the same room? Is there a spouse in the home instead? The spouse's income, and if the spouse is in the home, the household expenses, any premiums for Medicare plans, and more. The worker will budget all of these and let you and the facility both know what amount needs to go to the facility for payment. Then, if you're approved, Medicaid pays the remainder of that facility bill. How long do I have to stay in the facility? Your stay can be less than 6 months or greater. That is normally determined by the facility staff, your doctors, you and your family. What do I do after approval? Be sure to inform your caseworker of any changes as soon as possible. Changes in Medicare supplement premium, home expenses, client or spouse passing, anything that changes in or out of the client's name as well. These can all affect the amount that goes to the facility and or stays in the client's account. Income, resources, and transfers are reviewed yearly. You'll receive a request from your caseworker if information is needed on that. And just to kind of end on my part, there's just too many rules and regulations to go into too much detail today, but you should always talk to your local agency and your facility representatives to get more specifics. And thank you, everybody, for your time and patience with me.
Thank you, Michelle. We appreciate it. And we know this is a mammoth topic. And it is also individualized. So everybody can look a little bit different based on their own circumstances. So Todd has put in the chat, interesting fact, Michelle led a community Christmas drive last December to give every resident at Clay County Center a Christmas gift bag. Aw, that's awesome. He has a heart for our aging population.
Love to take care of other people.
Thank you. Thank you. I do have one question and I can't think of what it's called, but when DSS, you all decide, Medicaid decides how much a person owes, and Medicaid pays the rest, the facility calls that something.
It's called a PML, Patient Monthly Liability.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I think that's confusing for some folks. They don't understand what that means. So if we can use that same language, I think that helps for continuity. So a PML. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions of Michelle before we move on to Mistie? So we have some DSS agencies offer placement services, social health placement into assisted living and nursing. So some have help with placement. Thanks, Lisa.
They do.
All right, here we go. If you have more funds than allowed, then you gift funds to your grandchildren or children.
There are a lot of factors you have to look at there, so definitely talk to your caseworker in that circumstance. Don't ever give anything away or do anything before you talk to that caseworker.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Okay, thank you again, Michelle. And if you think of questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Mistie, I see your square and you're muted. Oh.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. You ready for me, Sarah? Okay. I'm Mistie Cooley. As they had introduced me before, Happy Older Americans Month. I'm so honored to be asked to speak today. I'm not really a public speaker, but I'll do my best. So I thought it would be a good thing to start as, what exactly is a skilled nursing facility? Because a lot of times people will think that we're the same thing as, assisted living or things like that. So I thought it would be good to explain exactly what a skilled nursing facility is. A skilled nursing facility is also known as a nursing home. They're a residential facility where residents receive a high level of care and assistance following an injury, surgery, illness, or to help manage chronic conditions. A full capacity of healthcare services is offered, including a combination of therapies such as physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and professional medical care. These services may be necessary for the short term to help residents return to the level of independence and lifestyle they're accustomed to, or skilled care may be required over the long term for those who need around-the-clock care due to a chronic medical condition. Unlike other healthcare residential facilities, skilled nursing facilities are required to employ a sufficient number of licensed staff, such as RNs, LPNs, and certified nurse aides, 24/7, 365. Skilled nursing care is typically more expensive than other types of long-term care because it requires a higher level of training and experience. The staff at skilled nursing facilities must be able to provide a wide range of services, including wound care, IV therapy, and rehabilitation. So due to the cost of skilled nursing facilities, many residents or families find it necessary to apply for financial assistance. So one question is, what is my financial options if I have to go into a skilled facility? A lot of people have the misconception that Medicare will pay for their stay the whole time they're in a facility. And that's not the case. Medicare will typically pay up to 100 days if you have a qualifying 3-night hospital stay. There's also many variables, like you have to have a 60-day break in skilled services. And skilled services could range from a number of things, from rehabilitation to tube feeding to some chronic wound care. So you have to have a 60-day break. You have to go in the hospital for a 3-night stay, and then Medicare will pay up to 100 days if those qualifications are met. You must admit to the facility within 30 days of the qualifying hospital stay. So Medicare will pay day 1 through 20 at 100%, and this is traditional Medicare. Then you get into different things like managed cares, and that gets very confusing. Different policies pay different things. So this is traditional Medicare. So day 1 through 20, they will pay at 100%. Days 21 through 100, residents have a co-insurance of $200 per day. This could be paid privately, it could be paid by a second insurance, or it could be paid by Medicaid. Days 100 plus, the resident becomes private pay or Medicaid. Some residents may have long-term care insurance that reimburses them for the room and board. Typically, long-term care insurance, the family will bill that claim to the insurance. They will cut a check to the family. So it's your responsibility to pay the facility up front, and then they reimburse you for that. Without a 3-day qualifying stay or Medicare benefits, your payer source options for nursing facility would be private pay or Medicaid. So as you can see, most residents find that they need the financial assistance of Medicaid. So I've compiled a list of most frequently asked long-term care Medicaid questions. First of all, does Medicaid pay for nursing homes? Yes. When a nursing home stay is considered medically necessary, your physician must document that you meet the nursing facility level of care, meaning that you need the kind of care only provided in a nursing home. How do I qualify for Medicaid in a nursing home? There are many factors that determine your eligibility for Medicaid in nursing homes, just as Michelle explained earlier. In 2023, a single individual applying for nursing home Medicaid in North Carolina must meet the following criteria. Have an income under the Medicaid pay rate, which changes every quarter for the facilities. It's usually estimated between $6,381 a month up to $9,087 a month. You must have assets under $2,000, and you must require the level of care provided in a nursing facility. Michelle touched on this a little bit. A common question we have is, does the state take my house if I get Medicaid? So cited from the American Council on Aging, a common concern among elderly persons applying or receiving nursing home care or other assistance from Medicaid is what will happen to their home. This is also frequently a concern of older adult children whose mother, father, or both parents need Medicaid assistance to reside in a nursing home facility. So can Medicaid take the home of an elderly individual moving into a nursing home? Can the state take the home after the Medicaid recipient dies? What if a spouse or another family member lives in the home? Is there any way for the home to be protected as inheritance for family? Unfortunately, as Michelle said, these are all complicated questions, and the answers depends on a family-specific situation. A simple answer is, as long as the Medicaid beneficiary or their spouse is living, Medicaid cannot take one's home or force a sale. However, there are many complexities and nuances to that. How far does Medicaid look back into my finances for transfers? Typically, and this is, as Michelle said, varies some, the state looks back 5 years to determine whether you transferred assets or for less than market value within 5 years of applying for Medicaid. Applicants who gave assets may be subject to a period of ineligibility. Another question is, if I need to spend down assets to qualify for Medicaid, can I give them to my children or grandchildren? Most of the time, this is considered a transfer of assets. Again, Michelle said, always speak to your caseworker before you do something like that. So before you start the spend down process, it's important to contact your county DSS, and they will help you navigate these decisions, as there are many options for spend down. Not all assets will be counted against you for the purpose of Medicaid eligibility. Personal possessions, usually one vehicle, your principal residence, and some prepaid funeral plans, but each policy would need to be reviewed, are usually not accountable assets. However, the state will likely still request information about these assets. If I get Medicaid, do you take my check? Medicaid determines the amount that the resident must pay the facility each month. This is commonly referred to as the PML, or patient monthly liability. The PML is a patient portion that is determined by each individual's income. In most cases, this amount is the resident's total combined income minus $30. You may be assigned a lower PML if you have a spouse at home or sign an intent to return home within 6 months. The resident pays their portion to the facility as soon as you get your check at the first of the month, and then Medicaid pays the difference to the facility. If you have an odd check payment, like I know we have some people that maybe don't get their check till like the 20th of the month. It's important that you let the nursing home or nursing facility know this up front, because most people's come on the 3rd. So on, by the 5th, we're expecting payment. So if your check comes at an odd time in the month, it's important to let the facility know this. When is the best time to apply for long-term care Medicaid? Because no one knows what the future holds or how a resident will respond to treatment, it's best to apply for long-term Medicaid the day of or as soon as possible after being admitted to the nursing facility. Most of the time, it takes 45 days for the Medicaid to process your application. Coinsurance starts on day 21, and you are not guaranteed 100 days of Medicare. Medicare days are based on a certain level of care. If you meet that level of care or no longer are making progress in the facility may give you a 2-day notice called a nom-knock that your Medicare days are ending. What do I need to gather for my Medicaid application? State requires Medicaid applicants to provide the necessary information to prove they are eligible for benefits. The burden of proof is on the Medicaid applicant, not on the state. In addition to needing to provide identifying information such as proof of citizenship, some of the other following documents may be needed to be provided to the Medicaid agency when you apply for benefits. Some of these documents could be proof of, and these are not a whole list, and some of these may not even be needed. Proof of income, a copy of any pay stubs, social security statements, pension checks, income tax returns for the past 5 years, and verification of other sources of income, for example, rental income or dividends. Bank records, copies of bank statements for the past 5 years. Property, a copy of the deed of any property owned within the past 5 years, and a copy of the most recent property tax bill. Retirement account statements for the past 5 years for retirement accounts. Insurance, copies of any insurance policies, including health insurance, life insurance, and or long-term care insurance. Car registrations. This is any information for any cars that are owned by you. Burial arrangements, copies of any prepaid funeral contracts or deeds to burial plots. They will first request this information online before asking you to bring it in. But I think it's a good idea just to have this stuff available just in case you need it. That way it speeds up the Medicaid application. After you begin receiving benefits, you are not done. Medicaid reviews your income and assets every year to ensure that you are still eligible. This could involve electronic verification or submitting more documentation. So some more commonly asked questions about being admitted to the nursing home is, how long does it take to get into a facility? This depends on your physician. If not being admitted from the hospital, your physician will need to complete an FL2, and it's then sent to the facility. Y'all were asking what an FL2 is. I basically say an FL2 is your order to be admitted to the facility. The facility will review and make sure they can meet your needs. At that time, we will look at payer source. If all checks out, we schedule a time for admission. If there is a bed available, admission can happen as quickly as the same day. Waiting list. From time to time, there is a waiting list, especially for long-term care residents. If we have a short-term resident needing to move to the long-term side, they are bumped to the top of the list because they're already in the facility and need a bed immediately. What do I need to do first? Talk with your physician about long-term care placement and your options. Then call the facility or stop by for a tour and talk to the social service department, and they will guide you in the admission process from there. What information do I need to provide the facility? Insurance cards, DNR status, wishes, vaccination records, the FL2, proof of Medicaid application, or status of your financial situation. And that is all that I have.
That's awesome. What questions do you have? It's a lot of information we've thrown at, or these ladies have thrown at you today.
Okay, this may have been answered already, but is there different eligibility standards for like long-term care Medicaid in a facility and in the community, right?
Yes, there is.
Okay. Okay, because we try to tell people, to go ahead and apply regardless and just kind of see, but I never know what to tell people eligibility, what it is.
We
Thank
always
you.
say the same thing. We always encourage them to apply, because just because you don't qualify in the community doesn't mean that you will not qualify in a nursing facility because of the
Right.
cost of care. A lot of times that will help you to qualify for the Medicaid, where at home you are over income status. It's much different for sure.
Gotcha, okay.
And they're the experts. They're the ones that determine eligibility. None of the rest of us do. And so we don't have the tools that they have in order to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. So it's better to go to the caseworker at your local DSS to get your answers.
And even the facility can guide you somewhat, but we're not the experts when it comes to qualification. I mean, we can, guide you in how to do the application process, who to go see, phone numbers, exactly those kind of things. But when it comes to saying whether you'll be eligible or not, we don't know, because we don't have all the information the DSS has.
Lisa has a question.
Hey, Misty, I have a question. I'm
Okay.
thinking about the person whose loved one comes from the hospital to rehab and they've never been engaged with DSS before. And so it's looking like they're not going to get to go home and they may be transitioning into skilled care. Walk me through that process, how y'all have that initial conversation with that family. Do you have like a fact sheet you give them, or what do you give them to explain their next steps?
We don't have really a fact sheet. That might be actually a good idea for us to have. But we do have usually a 72-hour meeting, 48 to 72-hour meeting up front that we discuss, what's your plan? What is your goal? What happens if you don't reach that goal? What's the next plan? Do you have, and we talk about things that are needed in the home. What do you need for us to get you back home? Do you need any kind of services? Do you need any kind of equipment at home? Those kind of things. But typically we encourage, especially if they don't have that second insurance and they have a whole lot of things, medically coming against them, we encourage them to go ahead and apply for that Medicaid application. I mean, it don't hurt. Even if you, you were approved, you can still go home. It didn't make any difference. But what typically happens is, they think that their loved one's going to be able to go home, and then they find out they can't, 30 days into this, that they can't go home. And then, then they're looking at, okay, they're no longer making progress on Medicare, so they're going to have to come off Medicare soon and go to the long-term side. So then they've lost 30 days already. Then it's 45 days, up to 45 days for the application process. And that's typically, I believe, Michelle, you can correct me if I'm wrong, once Medicaid gets all the information. So too, the families have to gather all this information, and sometimes it takes a while to find all these things for your loved one. So we typically will tell you to apply up front. We will also help you with the application process if that is needed. But typically our counties around here are very, very good, and the caseworkers are excellent to really jump in there and help the families as much as possible. So typically once we refer them to the county that they're supposed to go to, I mean, they pick it up from there, and we don't hear all the horror stories that we do in some other larger counties in our area usually.
What's your daily cost of care, Misty?
It really kind of depends on the room you're in, but I mean, it can run anywhere 300 plus a day sometimes, especially if you're in a private room. It's very costly. Again, the co-insurance just for Medicare. So if you don't have that secondary insurance after day 21 is $200 a day.
Right.
So yeah, it's going to run you anywhere from $250 to $375 a day.
Right. So we have a question. So the look back period is only 5 years and not 7. Michelle?
Correct. 5 years for long-term care.
We have heard rumors for a long time that they're gonna go up on that, but it never has happened, so.
So far not.
You're welcome, Debbie.
Can you talk a little bit more about that, Michelle, about the 5-year thing? Because that's always tripped me up a little bit, because I'm like, you don't always know, like, okay, in 5 years, I'm gonna go into a facility. So how can people, like, I guess, prepare for that? I don't know.
There is lots that we look at there. We do look back 5 years. But one of the big things is, are they getting rid of that asset because they're seeing a nursing home stay coming? And they're trying to get rid of it in order to be qualified for that.
Right, okay.
And if not, then we look at all those factors. Why did they do it? Where did it go? What was the reasoning behind it? There's just a lot there that we have to look at.
Which speaks to the 45 days that you have to be able to investigate that, as well as, again, it's individualized, because, you know, there are 40 some odd people on this call, and all 40 of us have a different story.
And a lot of times, you know, mom and dad controlled the assets, they controlled the bank accounts, and the child is stepping in. Mom and dad may not remember any of that. Do I have life insurance? I don't know. And the child is trying to figure that out, and it takes time sometimes to get all that figured out. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, it's May 23rd, 2023. My mama died almost 3 years ago, and I knew all of her stuff. I could answer everything. Do I know that on my dad? No, I don't. So if something were to happen today, it would take me a while, and my sister a while, to figure out, you know, answer A to Z in order to piece the puzzle together. And that's because he's cognitively able to tell me, you don't need to know that right now.
Yep. And also another thing I'll mention, if, like, say on day 45, you do not have everything that's needed and you still need more time, let that caseworker know. If we need to, if we still have to close the case, we can always reapply the very next day. So.
That's great information. Thank you, Michelle. Yes.
She came to see you.
What else? What other questions do you have?
Hi, Gil. Who is it? Kelly Lucas.
Kelly, can you mute?
This is review.
Thank you.
Got it.
You got the folks here. You better ask. What hot question? Or they're so good that they've answered your question. That's it.
That's what it is.
That's it. All right. We appreciate you ladies so very much, and your expertise, and you explain things so well. And I'm sure, you know, like when we go to the doctor, we get information, and then 3 days later we think, I should have asked that. If that happens to you, please reach out to us and we will get the answer to your question. So we do have another question. Spousal protection. Michelle, can you explain that a little bit more?
Yes. What that is kind of, if you've got a husband or wife, one goes into the facility, the other one's at home. We look at what say the wife goes into the nursing home. We're going to look at all the husband's assets, everything that's in his name. Then we're going to kind of look at what she makes, there's so many things there, but look at seeing protect all of his, see if there's any of hers that we can let him keep to pay bills and help with different things at home as well. That's kind of the super simple version.
Yeah. Does that help?
Okay.
Anything Go ahead.
Okay, I think this is more for Misty, and I'm hoping that I phrase this in a way that makes sense. If you are helping a loved one go to a facility, and something happens with their Medicaid doesn't go through, or it doesn't come through in time, and you owe, are you responsible of paying that?
The resident is responsible.
Okay,
Yes, we can't hold the family member responsible, but the resident is responsible for that.
okay, that was my question. Thank you.
And can I jump in there as well, real quick? Sometimes the facility can do a payment with the client. And if they do, depending, we have to discuss it with the facility and the client. If they do a payment plan, a lot of times as North Carolina Medicaid, they can take it off of that PML. So the facility still gets their payment. Medicaid just picks up a little bit more for that time frame.
Okay.
And that way the bill gets paid, the facility gets paid, and none of the family has to try to worry about it. So.
Gotcha. Okay. I wish I knew all of this. Like 2 years ago, my dad had to go into a facility and his Medicaid hadn't gone through yet. Like we had just applied, like the day he got in, and the facility needed to be paid. And we thought, okay, we're going to have to pay, and then get reimbursed. And that is what happened. But still, that was a lot of money to go without. We had to pay for like a week's worth and then wait on reimbursement. So that was kind of tough.
Yeah, sometimes that happens. So just always just communicate between the facility and your caseworker. Lots and lots. Every question you got, any concern, anything.
Gotcha.
We have another question. Can you give examples of income disregards, exclusions, and deductions when determining income eligibility? Just a couple of examples.
As far as income, there is only a $20 disregard as far as the income goes. When we look at resources, there are pages of different things that we can look at and possibly take off of resources. But income, unfortunately, is pretty stiff on that one.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Anything else? All right. Again, ladies, we appreciate your expertise. Thank you so much for being with us. And for those of you that have been with us and know us, we have a door prize at the end of our sessions. And so we have done that. Kelly has looked at her screen and given us 2 names. And I'm going to turn over to Lisa to
All right.
talk about that.
We have 2 door prizes today. And so one of the lucky winners is Jessica Hensley.
Yay, Jessica!
Yay, Jessica.
From Jackson County Department on Aging.
Yay, and Jessica, you have won a really beautiful little yellow beach bag and some, I don't know if you can see it or not, and some water bottles. And there's some other little prizes down in there, okay? And then the next door prize goes to Sydney Hyde.
Yay!
Yay, Sydney. And this, Sydney, you're gonna have to trust me on this. I looked at this as a beautiful Silverstone 3-quart au gratin baking dish. And it has sort of a blue bottom, but it's absolutely beautiful. So congratulations.
Jessica, you can come by and pick yours up if you don't mind. And Sydney, I think you're in Graham County.
Yes.
Would that be right? If so, communicate with us either in chat or via email where we can send this to you. All right, Graham Health Department, awesome. Oh, Laura, thank you, Laura. Laura's going to bring it to you, Sydney.
Yay. Great.
All right. Thanks again. Good to see you. Next week will be our final session. And it, just as a reminder, it will be on guardianship. And Linda Kendall Fields, as well as Hunter Clemens, will be our guest speakers. Linda has been very involved on the state level with the changes in guardianship, which some changes are really new over the last month. So we'll be we'll be on the cutting edge. We always are, but we'll be on the cutting edge of that information, as well as we'll welcome Hunter Clemens, who is the clerk of court in Haywood County, who has also been very involved in the guardianship information across the state. So good to see you today. Go out and enjoy some beautiful weather, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.
Bye.